So everyone becomes a one night fighter, especially. And even in the exam, most of the exams I did a one night preparation. The entire semester I was chilling out with
You want me to
friends.
believe that?
Yeah, it was like if exam is starting a week away, we will start preparing 2-3 days before. And in 1 week in engineering, there is an exam every day, right? Or sometimes 2 exams per day. So we will just prepare one night before the exam. And then that night, we would wake up till the 5 a.m. We would go to bed, and then we will again move at 9 a.m. for the exam or something. But yeah.
Welcome back to the Exploring Podcast. My name is Teja, and thanks to each and every single one of you who come back every time to learn, to execute, and to exploit for a better purpose. Now, you know that I'm a good learner and a good listener as well. And I absolutely love to explore the various sources of knowledge in technology, business, our life. And that's a part of our vision as well, right? And it's very rare that we get so much captivated by someone's work on the internet. And today's guest is the one who created a wide range of learning resources, from learning a programming language to cracking the interviews, and a very, very rare personality who is an incredible intersection of kindness and intelligence. As you already know, he is none other than Pratik Narang. Before we move ahead, a huge shout out to Talk Python Training for sponsoring this episode. Exploiting is all about loading up your career in the tech space. Learning a bit of Python will allow you to take your expertise and 10x it with automation, APIs, and even AI. The best place on internet to learn Python is our Talk Python Training. Visit talkpython.fm/exploiting to find your next level. Now, onto the ad-free show. Pratik is a software developer, technology freak, ace programmer, and one of the most popular programming instructors in India. He also happens to be the co-founder of Coding Blogs and is fondly called as Pratik Bhaiya by his students. His easy explanations with bite-sized content make people fall quickly in love with coding. His interest lies in algorithms, problem solving, and machine learning, and he loves to travel, making new friends, guiding juniors, and playing table tennis in his free time. His interactive JavaScript resume is highly popular among the student communities, and on top of all of that, he's someone so deep into empowering students' career and mentoring with immense care and love. And I can't wait anymore to start exploring with Pratik Narang. Thank you so much for joining us, Pratik. I'm super excited to have you on the show.
Hi everyone. So it's a pleasure to be on the Exploiting podcast show, and it's a great introduction already given by Teja. Thank you, Teja, for having me today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pratik. I'm so glad that you're here. And I genuinely love the way you presented yourself in the web app with all of your game development skills with JavaScript. Guess what? I've been stunning every single time that I visit your portfolio with all of those cute animes of you, and which turns out to be a fully responsive portfolio, right? So I highly recommend checking out Pratik's crazy portfolio at pratiknarang.com in the episode notes below. And that's fantastic. Like, how did you did that? Like, what was the journey behind making such a interactive, game way kind of way of a portfolio representing yourself?
Right, so the story is pretty interesting. So most of the times what happens is people make a resume to get into the companies, right?
Yeah.
So at my time, what I had was I did an internship at SanDisk. I got a pre-placement offer, and that was on the first day of my fourth year in the college. So I had an offer, and at that time I didn't had this resume. I just had a PDF resume. So I was thinking, okay, now I have plenty of free time. What to do? I don't need to apply to companies. I have a job offer. I may do a startup in maybe coming months. So let's try to do something crazy, something interesting that could be. So then I came up with this idea of interactive resume. I saw a couple of people making some cool resumes. Then game development was something that I was doing in my third year, learning how to make games. So then, okay, let's put this idea to make a Mario style resume. And I loved designing, so I made out the graphics in maybe a couple of weeks. Then learned, okay, we will use JavaScript. Then I explored what are the various options. So I came across this framework called Phaser that is used for building 2D games. So I used that and built it in maybe, I took somewhere around 12 weeks or 8 to 12 weeks to build this.
Cool, but how about why there is a Mario canvas style? Do you love Mario, Super Mario, and all the games?
Yeah, so I used to play a lot of Mario in my childhood and a lot of computer games, but not now. I've not played PUBG even, But yeah, so it's something that always fascinates me. The designing thing, the coding thing, the gaming thing, game thing. When you make games, it puts all your concepts into practice. Even the graphic designing, that is one of the areas I like doing in my free time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But also I'm kind of surprised, like, and I'm kind of curious. What if you have played PUBG earlier than Mario? Like, how would that would be? Like, how the web app would be?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
then
your website would be highly visited with all of the youngsters, with all of your students and everything, right?
definitely. I hope one day one of my students will definitely have this PUBG style resume.
Awesome. Yeah, then you should guide them along, like how you could make that and everything, right? Super.
Yes.
So, and also in a, the positions that we are actually currently in, right? You are now the co-founder of Coding Blocks. After a long story back, you've been, striving and working and hustling in programming or designing or, corels and everything, right? You've been into a lot of phases, you've been a lot of journeys, and now you're in a specific journey as a co-founder, dealing up the things and making others to learn a lot from you, making others to learn from your company, right? But the decisions that you have making will actually defines what you are. Right. So can you just tell me, like, how about your decisions that actually turned you as a co-founder at Coding Blocks?
So from the beginning only, when I started learning programming, it was in my second year. Okay, so I had no computer science background in my class 11, 12th. And first year I struggled a lot to write the first 10 programs of coding, or simple hello world, simple factorial. So many of the times I would just cram them and go to the lab and just execute the program by hook or crook. Then in second year was the time I took coding seriously. No, I should definitely learn this. I went through a couple of websites, tried hands-on competitive coding, blogs, tutorials, whatever is available on the internet. I just went through, and then I saw that, okay, this is how coding is actually logical. You need to focus on the logic, and the solution is something you just start coding once you know the logic, right? So then I worked hard for 1 year with my friends, with my peers who were actually good, and I got good at the end of 1 year. And third year I improved my skills further, learned about some new technologies like JavaScript and web development, Python, Django. So that was my third year. The final year, I thought, everyone is going for a corporate job, though I had an offer from SanDisk, also an opportunity to join Amazon. But I thought, let's do something different. Let's do something in which I can help people to learn coding. So that's when the time I met Munna Bhaiya, who's also a founder of Coding Blocks, and his vision was to make people fall in love with coding. So I met him. He said, personally he is not living in US, and he wanted someone to run his Coding Blocks. So I said, I can take that ownership. I can build a team, I can hire mentors, and I can teach myself personally. So I brought in Arnav, who headed the technology team, and then a year later we started envisioning our online products. So offline was one medium. So whatever revenue we got from the offline model by teaching coding, we invested that into building online products. And 2018 was the time then these online products came, and till now they're getting popular every day. And students love these courses. They learn how to code, and they get their doubt resolved. So doubt solving is one of our main features that people don't generally get on other platforms. And if you're stuck in a problem, they lose the motivation to continue further. So here we help them on a personal level, help their doubts cleared. So that's why people keep on doing these courses, and courses have a higher completion rate as compared to Coursera or Udemy or something else.
Cool. I mean, when you just mentioned about, letting others through actually help in their careers, right? So most often we find a lot about letting them to learn how to code, letting them how to solve the crux, how to solve the logic and put it forward with various algorithms which have been coming every single day, right? But I think the most important thing than all of that is that making them motivated, making them, inspired about doing it, right? Taking it a part forward from the solving. But before that, they should be loving to do it. They should be actually inspired and motivated to actually work on something that should be having a massive impact, right? But I see a lot of my friends, a lot of students across are missing in that motivation, right? Once they get in, they can go ahead. They can actually tackle up and they can go up into the ladder and they can climb ahead and they can grab the flag. But the thing is, before that, I feel there is a lot of lack in motivation and consistency and with inspiration, right? So how do you keep your students community or all of your students who are learners motivated to move forward?
Definitely. The first step is always the toughest one, right? So when you're taking a first step, you're jumping into coding. You need lot of energy. You need lot of determination. You need to believe in yourself that you can do it, right? So whatever problems you face, someone says, okay, I'm not getting these logics, so we will help them to spend more time on building logics. And many times people don't know why they are learning coding, right? So you should know the power of coding. What are the things you can build with coding, right? So I tell all my students, just look at the environment around you, right? So how much time you're spending on your phone and laptop? So most of them would say 90%. They're watching Netflix, they're working on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, they're ordering food, they're booking doctor appointments, even so everything is happening online, especially after this post-pandemic era, right? So more and more businesses, more and more services are going to become online, right? So for the next 10 years, I see a huge demand for coding, and everyone dreams is to have a good lifestyle, a decent lifestyle of living, to get a great job or to open their own startup, right? So coding is one of the great means to achieve that dream, right? So if you keep your dream in your front of that and you see that coding is one of the paths that leads to my dream, then you should definitely be motivated to chase that.
Absolutely. I mean, that literally means a lot. Like that's beautifully said. But another way, when you said about such a skills to build their core foundations on what they wanted to achieve, right? The core foundations are actually this programming and competitive programming and tackling up and all of that, right? But I have been seeing a lot of people around where there are two kind of people, and I hope you're already aware of this. Like there are two kind of people who are actually so much into competitive programming, so much into tackling the interviews and trying out to various problems in various algorithms and trying out deeper and deeper and deeper into that. But there are other kind of people who are more into product related. They might try building up a website, they may come up with working with various technologies, they may come up with doing some backend APIs, and they do all of that, right? But I know there is a lot of intersection between them where one requires the other and another requires the other, right? But I see people who work on building such things, such cool things with a lot of knowledge. I don't see they love competitive programming, right? And in the same way, like people who work with competitive programming, they don't actually, reflect much with that. So what do you say about this?
So definitely. So I have also seen that there are one section of audience who will dive so deep into competitive coding, they will solve highly challenging problems, highly mathematical problems. And there is one set who will just go into web development, building apps, building products, and they won't care. Okay, so in an ideal scenario, you should know both, right? So I'm not saying you should be entirely doing web development, because when you work at a company such as, let's say, Google, Facebook, Netflix, Amazon, Flipkart, any good product based company, what those guys need people who can write servers, who can write backend, and at the backend, if you need to write some logic, that logic should be optimized, right? So that is where competitive programming fits into the picture, right? So you should know web development, at least you should have a decent knowledge of algorithms. And in competitive, you will find there are hundreds and thousands of well-known algorithms. You do not need to memorize them, right? So if something is already there, you can just Google and look it up and deploy. So what you need is, you need to have logical thinking skills. Okay, if given a sorting problem, then which sorting algorithm should I apply, right? So that's enough for working in a company, right? So you need to question the requirements. What kind of data I have? Is it a big data? Is it an integer data? Is it a floating point data? What is the range of the data? Okay. So in all your interview questions, you will be given ambiguous statements, right? So question statement would be ambiguous, right? So you need to ask the interviewer, okay. So competitive coding will definitely help you in interviews, because it increases your skills in logical thinking, right? So you can do it, definitely do it if you love it, but at least you should have a decent level of knowledge working with different data structures, different algorithms. So I call this data structures as a toolbox, right? So it's a toolbox for solving problems. If you don't have the toolbox in your hand, you can't even solve problems just by learning web development, right? So any algorithm that you're going to build, you will require a toolbox. Okay. And so we can say that it's like the two wheels of the bike. One wheel is competitive coding, one wheel is the product development. So both should go in hand. So when students ask me, oh, what should I mention in my resume, so I say, okay, if you have a good profile on competitive coding, do mention your rank, do mention your achievements, but at the same time, at least have 2 to 3 good projects that an interviewer knows that, okay, you have some real software engineering experience as well, right? Okay, just going in an interview with competitive coding, you have a chance of getting rejected. Okay, so someone also asked me this question recently. I have 2000 rating on Codeforces, but I don't have any projects. Will it be good for me? So I suggest him do have some projects on the resume as well, right?
Super. I mean, another way, like looking in and taking it a bit forward here. So what happens is, in the same way, like people are from different mindsets, like we call like different sections, as you mentioned earlier. But what I see is people who actually try attending to the interviews of coding interviews, they have the genuine and look-alike and normal coding interviews where they ask you questions from LeetCode or any other platforms, and they take it and they let the students to solve it, right? But later on, what happens is, when the moment like the student actually come out, they just literally say that, I don't know why am I doing this. I heard this a lot, and I hope you already know about this. Like, I don't know why am I doing this. Of course, I don't know where they will be also used internally, even though I ask a person who's already been there for years with over 8 years plus experience, but he never used a kind of a very complicated data structures with what we call the dynamic programming or any other stuff. Like there is never a single chance that they tried implemented in the real time, right? So such a kind of a question like this lets the students to get demotivated. This lets the student to think a bit negatively about, we are not going to use it anymore, but why do we need to learn it, right? But what about your perspective in that?
So basically, I think many of the things, so what is being taught to you, it's more like a generic content that can be used in any of the projects or any of the companies. So it doesn't mean that if it is not used in one company, cannot be used in other companies. So if you just look at Google Maps, right, and the way it finds the shortest paths is based on AI algorithm. So when I talk about AI algorithms, they are based on the concepts of depth first search, breadth first search. Along with it, you have some heuristic metrics. They are like dynamic programming. So they are built using dynamic programming. So it depends upon the problem statement, especially when you go into open-ended problems that are not solved, right? So there also you need to have a lot of good algorithmic knowledge. If you go into company like IBM or Google where you're working on a research project, then definitely good knowledge of algorithms helps you to solve some open-ended problems as well.
Cool.
So one of my students who is from a tier 3 college, he recently got placed at media.net, right? So I asked him what is the work you are doing there. Okay, so he got a pretty good package. Then I asked him, are you really using data structure? He said yes, definitely. Each and every day he's working on a graph problem. Cool. He's working on a system to make clusters of news, something like Google News, and he is making extensive use of data structures there, right? So if he didn't have this knowledge of graph algorithms in detail, he won't be able to come up with new algorithms in his current company, right? So it definitely helps. Maybe it doesn't help to someone who is working on a web front end, but having a knowledge of algorithms increases your scope of working on different projects.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you actually, it's been almost around 35,000 plus students you've been trained over past years, and it's a huge thing that you've been training a lot of people, which actually means you literally know thousands of brains, thousands of thinking, right? So you've been working with them, you've been letting them to learn the things that they really wanted to and get into the companies, right? So can you just give a few things that actually made you stunned? Like these are the things that what we say. These are the things that they usually make common mistakes out of like 35,000 lot of students. So what are the things that you can figure out saying that these are the common mistakes that people do and they get afraid of?
Right. So many of the mistakes, the first major mistake is people don't read the problem statement properly, right? So if they look at it, they forget to look at the constraints. Okay. So you have to analyze that this problem has this given constraint and this should be solved in this given space and time complexity. That is the first mistake. So reading the problem statement is very important. Next, coming up with the solution is easy. Optimizing it is difficult, right? So you need to iterate in your mind, okay, if given this problem, what possible data structures I can use to optimize my solution. Can I use a stack? Can I use a queue? Can I use a tree? Can I use a trie? So this happens with many times, okay? So whenever I get a new problem statement, I just in my mind try to iterate over each and every possibility. Can I solve it using DP? Can I solve it using DNC? So instead of just going clueless how to solve this problem, just think about the tools that you have in your mind, okay? So the tools are your data structures and algorithms, right? So eventually you will find at least one tool that will give you the right direction to start with an optimal solution, right? That is something that each and every company is going to check, because everyone needs an optimized algorithm to run on their server, right? So that's why they are going to hire you. Another is whenever they find a easy question in the interview, right? So they jump their guns and come up with a solution, right? But many a times it happens that the easy question that they're looking at, they are missing out something. They're missing out corner cases, or they're not asking relevant questions to an interview, right? So I'll just give you an example. Okay, so maybe given a string, find something in it, something like that. Then you need to ask the interviewer what type of string it is. Okay, is it an ASCII string? Is it a lowercase string? Is it a uppercase string? Does it contain numbers? So asking relevant questions to the interviewers is what I think more than 80% of the people won't do, because in real software engineering, you will be given a project statement that can contain ambiguity, right? So most of the times interviewer will give you an ambiguous statement because he is looking for you to ask questions. So if you're not asking questions, that means you're not thinking, you're not showing your inquisitiveness, right? So because engineering is collaborative, right? So you have to work with people. So if you don't interact, if you don't ask questions, then definitely that comes out as a negative point for you, right? So asking questions is very important, right? And fourth is don't give up. It's not hard. It's not hard. If you have started something, if you are in the middle of the journey, then don't quit. Okay, with little more effort, you can pull things off, and it's really important to stay motivated and do till the end, right? So
yeah. Super. I mean, it's been really like a lot of things that I usually find happening as well. But there are a lot of things that I don't know either, because I'm also a part of this. I'll be getting a lot of things from you now to take it and apply in the real time, right? So what I want to know is, as you've been a lot of people around and with your students and making them to learn everything that they want to do and you want to do and what companies want to do. So I want to know if you get a chance to actually guide a first year engineering student to all the way to the final year, what would be your words of advice for him? Like, what would you say to him in just in a 5 minutes way, so that you could actually set this thing to fresher to have the life that you would love to do ahead?
Okay, so you're asking me for a 5-year roadmap, 5-minute roadmap for a 4-year engineering.
Exactly. Maybe you could go for maybe 4-minute roadmap for 4 years. That would be also fine.
Okay, so
it's gonna be challenging for you.
I will try to finish it in 4 minutes, right? So the thing is, the early you start, the better you get, right? So many people in the first year, they don't take coding seriously. They will say, okay, it's a DS is a subject in the third semester, we will start then. Why? Let's have some chill during the first year. We have studied so hard in the JEE. We will start from the second year, right? So remember, you don't have 4 years in the college. You only have 3 years, because once you enter 4th year, it's the placement time, right? So whatever you have learned during the 3 years, you have to show them in your 7th semester, right? So you only have 3 years in your college, and if you waste first year out of it, you get only 2 years. So 2 years is decent amount of time, but not enough if you want to stand out from the crowd. Okay, so if you want to stand out, start from the first year. Go with the fundamentals. Fundamentals are very important, that are going to help you till the placement. Okay, start with any one programming language, C++, Java or Python, whatever you want. My personal preference is C++ and Java. And go with the problem solving, learn data structures and algorithms, do some competitive programming. That's all for the first year, right? Second year, you start working on some interesting projects, web development, Android, Angular, React, whatever you want. Do that. Third year, before the vacations, brush up your data structures and algorithms. Possibly you will have some companies visiting your campus for internships. So practice questions on lead code, do some code forces contests, so that you are in a habit of writing code in a timed environment as well, right? So that is something you can do throughout the 3 years as well, because if you love competitive, you will automatically be doing this. Okay. And in third year, you can again work on the projects. Maybe in some time you also devote on the competitive programming if you like. Otherwise, keep working on projects. You can learn Python, you can machine learning, you can go for data science, or you can learn more technologies in the web, right? So that is something I will leave to you. Think of some idea that you want to build and chase it, right? So maybe start with small mini projects, and maybe later on then increase the complexity of the projects. Either start with a new project or improve your existing projects.
Cool.
So that when you sit for an interview, you have something that is deployed on the web, that is something people are liking, a web app or an Android app or an iOS app, or some cool platform you can show to your interviewer. Okay, I've built this. Okay, so you can be proud of yourself that you have achieved this in 3 years. So having good fundamentals is really important, and having good project development skills, that I call as software engineering. So if you're able to balance these two out during 3 years, it will really help you to get great jobs, right? And not just coding, focus on your health as well, right? So don't be a guy who is sitting for 12 hours on a system. If you spend 6 to 8 hours a day, that's more than enough, right, to excel in anything. And do follow your passion. If you want to listen music or watch some movies, make time for that as well. So everything can be balanced in college life. And one major mistake that people do is they forget academics, right? So when it comes to CGPA, that's also really important. Many times I've seen great coders not able to sit for many companies because the first round is a resume-based shortlisting or a CGPA-based shortlisting. So if you are less than 7 or 7.5, you are on a borderline, right? So it's safe to have a CGPA over and above 8. Then you are in the safe zone. You would be eligible for most of the companies.
Cool. And once you mentioned about the things that people are doing and striving a lot for all of this, I personally have seen and also been there where we try to multitask the things, right? We try to learn 3 or 4 all of the time in a single day, and we try doing it for a month, but we end up disappointing in all of that.
Right.
I've been there, and I know all of the people most of the times happens. They try to multitask the things and underestimating the power of one thing at a time. And they overestimate the power of multitasking these things, parallel doing 2 or 4. So about this, like, do you prefer going one thing at a time, or you prefer doing multitasking and you go ahead and try, or you would let them to choose to actually experiment and let me know?
So that's why I said on the first year, you just focus on problem solving. No web development, no Android development, no data science, nothing. Focus on one thing, the core fundamentals of programming. How do you think and how do you write code? That's it. Learn about the data structures. That's for the first year. Second year, you start with building projects, and it's going to be ordered in a way, because when you're going to build projects, you already have the knowledge how to write code. You know how to write, how to solve problems using data structures. Now it's time to put that knowledge into building something cool, right? So that's why I said second year you focus more on the web development, more on the Python or more on the JavaScript, whatever the technology you like. And third year, it's time for the placement, right? So you need to improve on the projects. You need to reiterate on the skills that you have learned in first year. So keep revising your algorithmic programming, solve some problems on Codeforces and on LeetCode. Do not memorize the solutions, right? So no one is going to ask you, okay, tell me the Johnson's algorithm or tell me the Cadane's algorithm. That's not going to happen, right? So you would be given a pretty simple, straightforward problem statement that you can think of, and you can come up with a solution in the given time frame, right? So no need to memorize any algorithm, not even the Dijkstra's or the Prims or the Cruxels, nothing. If you forget it, it's fine, right? So you should know how to build a particular algorithm, okay, and that you will improve with lots and lots of practice, right?
Super. I mean, maybe I would actually take it a bit deeper here. So when you mentioned about people will be looking for that and this, I'm kind of curious to actually know your process of actually hiring a person, hiring a fresher or any other person that, okay, let's go specifically not into general, but only into the fresher style. So if there is a person who is done with his graduation and been coming for a company, and you are the recruiter or a software developer, not like technically HR way, but you are a software developer there looking for the people who could work in your team, right? So you got a chance to actually interview the person out there, and what the things that you actually look for? What are the things that you actually look mostly and concisely into that person?
So one of the most important things that everyone looks for is problem solving. Given any logic, can you code it? Okay, can you come up with a solution, right? The next thing is how creative you are, right? So can you, because engineering is 50% coding, 50% it's an art, right? So you need to work in a team, you need to collaborate with each and everyone, right?
Yeah.
And if you're creative, if your resume reflects some projects that are creative, or if you can prove that you handled this and that situation in such a manner that reflects your creativity, then you could be a good option. Another very important aspect that a lot of people miss is communication, right? So having a good communication is really very important. You should be able to convey your ideas with the team, and how you work in a team or how you can grow as a leader. That is also something that we see, or other companies also see, right? So that is one more important component there, right? So if I just talk about the summary, so coding is important, your logical thinking is important, your communication is important, and if there is anything that distinguishes you from rest of the crowd, then that could be one of your top feature in getting selected.
Maybe they should be trying out various things, like you getting into software engineering and design and deep learning and all of that, just like you. So what would you say for that? Like
anything, any impressive project you have done, or any impressive story you would like to tell to your interview, right? So storytelling is something that's also getting popular. If you have some interesting stories to share about that can impress the interviewer, then you also have a good chance.
Yeah, that's a legit story should be. Yeah, that should work there, right?
Don't fake it, right?
Absolutely. But I think you're a kind of a nerdy guy, because you've been smashing all your academics till the engineering, where you got 10 out of 10 in your 10th grade and 95% above in the 12th grade, and all of like India 489 in JEE, one of the world's toughest exam. You've been going all of there, right? But you've been all of their places, and now you're actually a person who are actually letting others to learn, like you're teaching them, right? And you're training them in the positions. But surprisingly, like you have scored 80% in engineering. So did you got any enlightenment during the engineering that stopped you from reaching 95?
So definitely when you have studied so hard for this J8, everyone enters the first year that theek hai. In the first year the theme is let's have some chill, baki sab moh maya hai, right? It's a popular dialogue. So in the college I got pretty chill about academics. I just maintained enough score so that I have all my options open, and I was not in a race to get into the top 10 in the class 10 or top 20. So I was thinking theek hai, jaisa hoga we will do it, okay. So, and even in the exam, most of the exams I did a one night preparation. The entire semester I was chilling out with friends.
You want me to believe that?
Yeah, it was like if exam is starting a week away, we will start preparing 2 3 days before, and in 1 week in engineering, there is an exam every day, right? Or sometimes 2 exams per day. So we will just prepare one night before the exam, and then that night we would wake up till the 5 a.m. We would go to bed, and then we will again move at 9 a.m. for the exams or something. But yeah, so everyone becomes a one night fighter, especially in my college. I don't know what's the culture in your campus there, but there we had this one night fighter thing.
It's the same there here as well, but that's always the fun. So maybe that's how it got pivoted into all of that. And but you're also strong in the things that you're always interested in, and you did a lot of work on that as well apart from this.
So getting
Right.
getting 70-80% is easy, but making this 80% into 90% is a semester long hard work. That is something I never did.
Absolutely. And also, like, you've been a student, right? And you've been an engineer, and you're also a founder, and moreover now you're a trainer as well, right? But if you get a chance to speak with the Education Council of India specifically, what changes you would demand for?
So the major changes, most of the universities are teaching outdated content. They are not, some of the core subjects are good, but the things are more or less outdated, right? So the first and most important thing is you should at least update the syllabus so that it suits the needs of the present decade or present generation, right? And lot of obsolete things are being taught in the course, lot of irrelevant subjects are taught in the course. So that is something we definitely need to work on, the syllabus, academics part. And there should be some flexibility given to the students as well. So 1 or 2 semesters should be that students building their own projects without having any academic load, right? So they should have less academic load, less worry about exams, more of a practical kind of a work. And maybe they can have one optional year for someone who wants to do entrepreneurship. If he goes well, he can go with his startup, and if he wants to come back, he can come back and resume his degree later on as well, right? So maybe a 1 year break or 2 year break in the middle of study if someone wants to apply. So those are the things that can actually help us in having more number of entrepreneurs.
So, actually, when you teach something to someone, right, subconsciously, we create a pattern, right? We create such a kind of pattern which could easily able to dive into others' brain and stick with it and make a more intuition, right?
Right.
So, when you try explaining some problems to your students or letting them to understand the crux of the core problem, so what would be your teaching style? So, what would be your pattern that helps them to get that quick?
So the one thing I think why my students appreciate me is I make things a lot simpler for them, right? So I will try to break down the problem into simpler test cases and intuitive explanations. And I will also go through what examples are available on net, what example is there on Wikipedia, what's there on YouTube. And I will always try to come up with something that is making even those simpler, right? So if someone has already a video on particular algorithm and that's a complex algorithm, then I will think, what is the thing he is missing in this explanation? Why will students come to me to understand this algorithm? So I need to make things in the simplest possible manner for them so that everyone gets a hit.
Cool. That's great. I mean, that's the way that you actually get your students get attached so much, because I've been looking all the reviews in the internet, in LinkedIn, everywhere that about you, and sharing all about their journey with you and their process and their whole wins and all of that with you. And that's a huge thing for you and your community out there. And that's a big thing as well. But, and also taking that into the things into students specifically, like, getting back to the times of BC. I mean before COVID or pre-COVID impact. So I want you to actually take me back to those days where you've been delivering a lot of valuable talks with all of your experience to the colleges, right? You've been traveling across and getting into the colleges, and fortunately you have been to our college as well. So there are times, and you've been delivering a loaded value content out there. Surprisingly, what happens, 9 out of 10 people, they say they work on coding, but they say, I love data science, I love machine learning, right? So what do you think about that? Why do students get most attracted to saying like data science, I love it, and I want to work on it? Do you have like any views on it?
Right. So the reason I think is most of the people do not actually know what exactly is data science, what exactly is machine learning. So they get driven by this hype that AI is coming, AI is transforming lives. So there is no doubt there are a lot of cool applications, a lot of real life use cases of AI are coming, but I think it's more about the hype that people think that they will get a higher salary. But if I tell you the truth is till today, if you talk about AI and if you talk about software development, there are 5x more number of jobs in software development as compared to ML and AI, and those roles are very limited. They are very specific, and many companies would prefer if you have some specialization in machine learning and AI, they will only take you. Okay, so for BTech students, there are very less openings at a fresher level role in machine learning and AI. So if you are not sure, go with the web backend, go with the web front end, and you will have a lot more opportunities out there in the market. Because everyone is going to build an app, right? But not everyone is going to use machine learning and AI in their app, right? So every company needs a product which may or may not have an AI, right? So the first step is you should definitely know how to build a product. So AI is a second step. You can definitely learn it. You can definitely go into it. I know a couple of my students who got selected into these companies, IBM and one more, I guess. So I don't remember the names, but
That's okay.
There are some some companies who are hiring for these roles, and there are companies who are only hiring the people who have some specific degree, such as a master's or a PhD or some research background.
Super. I mean, taking in the same way like of companies, right? So we have like, we know a lot of companies, people are really, really fascinated about FANG, getting into such companies. And there are also a lot of people who are striving for getting into startups, right? So they're like different views, and both of them, whatever the company, whatever the position is, they all require problem solving and product development and all of that, right? So people usually get attached to specific companies like FANG, and they get a name, a term like FANG, right? They want to get into FANG again. And there are people who actually know something about it and they want to get into startups. So what do you say about it? Like your view upon getting into FANG or getting into a startup and work on, or what do you say? You start up a startup or do whatever you want, like?
So there are hundreds and thousands of great companies to work with, right? So these days, I don't know why people think this FANG as a status symbol. If they have FANG on their LinkedIn profile, that means they are doing something very great. While it's not the case, you should appreciate that if you're able to get a good job in a good company or a startup, it hardly matters, right? The only thing is you should be satisfied. You should have a good amount of time for yourself, your family, and you should be at peace, right? So I know many people who are in FANG and they are a lot of tense, right? They're
not satisfied.
They're not satisfied because there is so much pressure. There is work-life balance missing in their lives. So everyone has its own problems. If you get into a company X, you will think Y is better. If someone is working in Y, you will think company Z is better. So don't make comparisons. If you get good peace of mind, good decent salary, and a good work-life balance, you should be happy with the company as well, right? And between company and a startup, you definitely have a good chance to grow in any of those, right? And I will leave totally up to you how you decide. Okay, so there are a lot of factors that you need to compare when you have offers in hand, right?
Absolutely. I'm the same way in the companies, right? But how about when we look about into many roles coming up in LinkedIn, right? We see a lot of job openings in LinkedIn, Naukri, and Indeed, and whatsoever. Like, would name something, like you got a lot of positions coming up, and it's getting better in the pandemic as well. I see a lot of them are actually coming up. But the thing is, when there is a person who is actually in college and in the final year and actually looking for companies, when they tried applying for a specific company, there is a very high probability that people feel that they are not ready, right? They feel that they are lacking something more. They need to prepare even more better to apply for that, right? They have this such kind of an inner feeling, right, which actually stops them to apply something to because they feel they need to be more better than existing, right? So what do you say about it? Like when a person could actually get to understand whether he's ready to apply for companies and go ahead, and whether he's not, like how they could check up and go ahead.
So one way is you can actually do some mock interviews. So there are websites who offer you free mock interviews, right? One is Pramp. So you can, one is interviewing.io. You can definitely check your preparation levels by doing some mock interviews on these websites. And even if you have decent level of preparation and you think you need to study more, at that moment I will suggest don't stop applying, right? Because giving a real if you get a chance to get an interview, it will help you to become better. You will actually gain confidence that I can actually go till the interview round, and there would be definitely some learnings even if you get rejected. And if you get accepted, then it's a win-win situation for you. So don't stop applying, and even if you get rejected, every company allows you to reappear in next 6 months, right? So that means you need some preparation, and 6 months is a good time to again brush up your basics and improve on the areas that you are missing upon. So don't stop applying. If you come across 10 or 8 applications and whatever you feel these are the companies I would be interested in, definitely send your application to them. And many a times it happens that through online applications, these are like cold applications. The recruiter does not know you personally, right? And there are fewer chances of getting a call for the interview. And if you get a call for an interview, you're actually lucky enough, right? Otherwise, you have to go with the referrals through friends or through some seniors or through online tests or hiring drives. So those are more effective ways of getting in an interview. And cold applications don't work that better, but definitely you can still submit your resume. Nothing goes in that, right?
Super. Then if I just ask you maybe in this way, like trying out various ways, right? If they go into Internshala and they look for internships and they look for other roles, and there is very less probability that they actually, get the response back and move forward in the process, right? But how about, can you just tell me like how they could actually make use of LinkedIn to get into a position that they wanted to?
So you need to look for the people who have the tag recruiter or HR. You need to email them or message them. So I remember there was one of my student who was from Trier 2 or 3 college, and he messaged around 100 people, 100 HRs on LinkedIn, and he got response from 5 and 6. And he was not having a single company on campus, right? But at the end of maybe 3 or 4 months, he got around 3 offers in hand, one from BrowserStack, one from GoIbibo, and one from Microsoft, right? And recently he switched to Google, right? So one of the referral was given by me, and the 2 others he cracked through LinkedIn only, just by messaging the people who are the HRs at that companies.
Wow. Okay. I mean, sometimes I see often what happens is people jump directly into the message and they actually send the resume, right? Was it a good approach to actually send a message, build a conversation and ask for referrals or looking for positions? Is that directly go ahead and connect that and then you send the resume and all of that? Like, what would be your approach, special ways?
Yeah, definitely. So what you should do is you should first look at whether that company is having openings or not. So you can look at the profile of the HR. Has she posted a message like we are hiring for these positions in recent 1 month or 15 days? You can also look at Google that what are the openings present at this company. If there are no openings, then there is no point of contacting the HR, right? But what I suggest is instead of just throwing your resume, it's highly likely that you're not going to be considered. So just start having a conversation, and many a times people won't reply because there are so many people who are going to ping them, and it happens with me as well. Sometimes you see, okay, you open your inbox, there are 36 people who want to chat with you. So I feel it difficult to reply to each and everyone, but having patience and giving some follow-up in maybe you sent a message today, maybe she didn't reply, and or he didn't reply, you just give up a follow-up message 3-4 days later or 1 week later. So try to have a conversation first, and then you can also share your details. I'm really interested in your company, and why would be a good option for you guys. So show your strengths. Okay. So sell yourself. That's what I would say. You need to sell yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And also in that same process, while we perform, trying to actually present ourselves like a kind of a person that they would help, that they could take us and to the company to put it in a position, right? But in the between process, right, in that the crux bridge process, where they look for resumes, the crux, right? The resumes will actually let others to actually get an idea of that person in their brains. Once they look at the resume, they find, yeah, this is a kind of a guy who does a lot of work like this, right? But what is your option for choosing a better resume? Or do you have a specific to-do list before you submit a resume or before you do a resume?
So so the resume I would prefer is for a college student. It should be a 1-page resume, right? So if you're throwing me a 2-page or 3-page resume, then I would assume that you don't know how to prioritize stuff, right? So for a college student, no doubt how many achievements you have, you can just put it in 1 page, right? So for most students, it should be a 1-page resume, not more than that. And it should look clean. It should have proper formatting. That's what I look. Okay. So because when you're coding and you need to write clean code, and if you can't write a clean resume, then how can I expect you to write a clean code, right? So I expect that resume should be 1 page. It should be clean. It should highlight what you are in a first glimpse. Okay. So I'm just going to look at a resume for 5 or 10 seconds, and if I don't see the highlights in my first glimpse, then it's done, right? Now no one is going to read each and every line in your resume, right? So prioritize stuff. Keep the most important projects, keep the most important achievements. Don't put any extra information, a designing competition or a singing competition or a rangoli competition. If you don't have space for that, just avoid those things. Just keep the relevant stuff that is relevant for the job, right? And if you get to an HR round, you can obviously discuss your hobbies and all those stuff later on, but keep your resume to the point. Even if it is not 1 page, you are able to fill, let's say 70% of the page, it's fine. You do not need to complete the entire page just for the sake of writing it.
Absolutely. That's great. I mean, the way that you mentioned about the things in a single page that you need to present yourself very precisely, that's where the content that actually made them to deliver, right? That where they actually understand this is the guy who actually prioritizes all of this.
Yes.
And this is what they're actually looking for.
Yes.
And that's good. So that's how it goes up with kind of a resumes. And in the same way, maybe the LinkedIn profiles would be also the same, putting all of the things optimized with all of that, and maybe it should work, right? So that's all about our conversation, and these are all the questions that I have personally about having all the questions. Maybe it would be helping a lot of trainers out there, students out there, and the people who are trying to learn something, right? It's going to be like a lot of things that you gave insights for the trainers and for the students, for the teachers, or for the people who are striving to learn and develop in the things in the software engineering or in any other means. Right, and a huge pack for them. And also, as I hope you remember, we had a AMA form released out earlier, so we have a couple of questions for you, so that you got a lot of questions, of course, but I'm gonna pick a few, and then we picked out a few that actually kind of fits in, because most of the questions are already in our conversation, they got covered up. All right, so are you ready?
Yes.
Super. Okay, it's gonna be really quick because there are a lot of questions. So make sure you have kind of what we call the precise and what we call
to the point.
Exactly. Yeah, crisp. So future of coding.
So there is a lot of good scope, as I discussed, and the next decade is going to see a huge rise in the online business, online services. So it's great.
Super. Please tell me, when did you start coding, and how did you make that interactive resume? From where did you learn all of this?
So as I said, I did start coding in my second year, and interactive resume, I used JavaScript and I used Phaser. You can also do it using only JavaScript as well. And there were no video tutorials available, but I went through a couple of code examples that were there on the Phaser documentation to learn all of this.
Cooper, competitive programming versus software engineering.
Balance of both.
Super. What languages to learn? C++, Java, or Python?
So for a BTech student, I will recommend to work on 4 languages in 4 years. Okay, so my 4 personal preferences: C++, JavaScript, Python. Spend 1 year on each. Learning a language is not difficult, but every language comes with its own ecosystem. So Python has a very strong ecosystem of machine learning and data science, and even web. And JavaScript has a strong ecosystem of web development, right? So if you know these two in maybe second, third year, you have a very good profile. And C++ is something I would recommend you to start with, so that you can get your problem solving basics right? So 1 year in one language.
Oh, 1 year, one language. That's so cool, right? Okay, so what are the future plans of Coding Blocks?
Right. So there are a lot of plans. So we are trying to explore new areas. We are building some new tracks for the industry professionals as well. So and some new courses for you guys as well, so that you learn what is the state of the art.
Absolutely, absolutely. And how about time management strategies as a student?
Right. So this is one point that a lot of students struggle. So
Yeah.
you need to make a timetable, right? So maybe stick a paper timetable on your system and just make few ticks. Okay. And sometimes you can be goal oriented as well, right? So you do not need to make a timetable. You think of some tasks that you have to finish in this week, and then it's up to you how do you manage time to complete those tasks. Okay, so keep a goal in mind and work hard to achieve that goal in the given time frame. Okay, and one more thing that you can do is this: there is a website called walkatime.com, and that tracks all your coding activity, how much time you spent on a particular project or on coding or on writing. You can actually try that, and you can even ask your friends to install that, and then you can have a leaderboard to keep you motivated how much time each of your friends is spending on coding every day or every week.
Cool. So here's another one, like importance of academics or CGPA.
So as I said, it's really important for the resume shortlisting round. So you should have at least 8 CGPA by the end of the 4th year or 3rd year.
Yeah. So how can I do an internship at Coding Blocks or Bosch or TA Ship or Developer or CAs?
So as I said, Coding Blocks does offer a couple of internships. So those students who do really well, we ask them to become TS for the course and help other people to solve their doubts. And one is BOSS, Bountiful Open Source Summer. It's an open source competition. There is no applications for that. Anyone can come and take part in the BOSS. Everything goes on GitHub. If you know open source development, or if you're still learning, you can make contributions to the open source software and you will be ranked accordingly on the leaderboard, right? And for the dev internships, we do hire some interns as developers as well. So it's through an email process. You need to send an email to developers@codingblocks.com, and if your profile is good, we definitely consider you, provided we have the required openings, right?
Super. Okay, how to learn tech in a fast way and a better way?
So the fastest way is you grab the basics, maybe through an online course or through some documentation, and start building the projects, right? So that's the fastest way. Just keep an idea in mind that you want to build and start building it, right? So that's the fastest way to learn any technology.
Absolutely. I have just entered 3rd year. If I manage to get a rating of 2000 on Codeforces in next 2 months, but I have 0 projects on my resume, I don't know any web or app development, that what my chances of landing internships or jobs? What are your opinions? I don't want to waste time in development.
So that is something you have to do when you get a job, right? So you should not hate development. So at least spend some time, maybe 1 or 2 months on building some projects, and that will also increase your chances of getting selected.
Cool. I'm doing masters in Australia. I wish to work in FANG companies. That's it.
Yeah. Or any other company with a high salary package, right?
Yeah.
So the FANG companies, if you have some good internship experience, they give you a lot of preference, and clearing interviews is also important, right? So you need to be good at data success algorithms, problem solving, and build some good projects during your masters as well. And I would suggest, if you can, first go for an internship, and then you can either apply for the full-time role either in the same company or in some other FANG company, right? And yeah.
Cool. Okay, here we go. You have another one. I have a data science background, currently a teaching assistant in data analytics bootcamp, and wishing to switch to more of software engineering role. I have taken C++ master course at Coding Blocks, which seem to focus on data structures. Is there any other topic I should learn? And what will be the checklist, topics or projects we would need to before we apply to any of these companies? And further, does age matters? I'm 27, by the way.
Right. So I think this question and the last question are with the same guy, right? So I'm just going to have a combined answer for them, right? So as I said, try to grab some internships, right, after your masters, and you still have a good chance to get into the company of your choice. And as I mentioned in the podcast as well, that don't just target FANG. There are tons of great companies on the planet. So try to apply for all the companies that you would like to work with, right? So just don't restrict yourself to the 5 companies.
Absolutely. So that's all be the last question, and that's it. And you made a huge thing answering all of these questions within maybe 10 minutes out there, like 15, maybe. That's great. I mean, a lot of questions out there, and you made it so quick, and you gave an amazing conversation to the listeners out there for who are actually striving to get into the coding things and wanted to crack the interviews, or as I said, maybe excel in it, or maybe for the people who are trying to teach better, deliver better the content to the students who are actually learning competitive programming or software development, right? So the way that they actually get the conversation, maybe that they can take the best use out of it. So thank you so much, Pratik, for being here. It means a lot to me, and thank you so much for being here to all the listeners and giving so much value for here. Thank you so much, Pratik.
Thanks a lot, guys, and thank you, Teja, for this wonderful session. Wish you guys all the best for your future endeavors, and also my best wishes to Exploit Chat to create some new.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hope you create some new milestones in coming days as well.
Absolutely. So, I forgot about it. Before we hold the call, so if you wanted to feel like sharing something to the listeners, please feel free to.
I think I've already shared all of the insights that I wanted to share. And still, if you guys would want me to ask something personal or something I couldn't cover this time, so you can drop me an email or a LinkedIn message. I would try my best to answer your queries over there as well.
Absolutely. I'll be adding all the pointers down with your LinkedIn and email address, so they can directly reach you out with all of the questions, and you can directly respond back either way. So thank you so much, Pratik. It's been an amazing conversation with you.
Thank you, Teja.